Welcome. What we're going to do this week's task is to create a collection of 5 HTML files and design some indexes for them, display a bit more metadata, add a custom banner, and then write a read-only image of that collection so that we can take that folder and distribute it. In this case, probably copying it to the Dropbox. The first thing to do is to run the Greenstone Librarian Interface, or GLI, and to create a new collection for this task. We'll call this collection Week 2. The next thing to do is to import some HTML files. Now I've downloaded 9 HTML documents from a website and I've stuck them in a folder here. I called it Volume 1. So I'm going to drag that folder from the Gather tab into the collection window and drop it there. Now to make it easier for you to follow along this task, I've actually taken those files and put them in a Week 2 folder in the LIS 9720 Dropbox. So you can actually just drag them from there into your collection. If you haven't installed the Dropbox software, I've also put them on the course website where you can download them, unzip them, and then browse and find them and drag them into your collection window. And we see the files right here. I expanded them. Now for your assignment, you can take any 5 HTML files you've got or downloaded from the internet. Here for this task, we're going to use these files here. The next thing I have to do is to start cataloging them, adding metadata. When adding metadata, it's handy to take a look at the file you're cataloging. One of the things you can do is right-click on any document in your collection and choose Open an External Program, and this allows you to view that to determine how it should be cataloged. Here is the downloaded web page, and we see metadata, information research, it's non-hierarchical, there's a title, we've got a bunch of authors, and it was done by University of Sheffield. We also have an abstract there we could use. The metadata set used in cataloging for Greenstone is not MARC records, but is the Dublin Core metadata set. The default Dublin Core metadata set has 15 elements and is designed to catalog web resources, not necessarily journal entries or bibliographic materials, so it may not be suitable. So we're going to replace the default metadata set with the enhanced or qualified Dublin Core. The Dublin Core website has a number of documents. There's a best practices guide, similar to AACR2, and there's also examples of how you would catalog different things. Here's one on doing a journal article. To change the metadata set, we click on Manage Metadata Sets, and the 3 existing ones are displayed. Now we're going to click Add and then select a new metadata set. So select the qualified Dublin Core metadata element set and click OK. Only one Dublin Core can be active at a time, so we have to click OK on the warning and then click Close and then Close again. Now we have a lot more metadata elements to work with, including bibliographic citation. What you're going to catalog is the HTML files. You see there's 9 of them. Now any files associated with that web page, such as CSS, graphics, JavaScript, etc., are in the folders of the same name. We're not going to catalog those Paper 1, Paper 2, Paper 3 folders, but the Paper 1, Paper 2, Paper 3 HTML files. To make our job easier, we're going to do some batch cataloging. Now because all of the records are from the same journal, Information Research, we can select the top level folder, Volume 1, and apply to the bibliographic citation the value of Information Research. All folders and records within there will get this value. They'll inherit it. Next, we're going to catalog the contents of the number 1. This is issue number 1. And you notice we've put in has version as part of, because later on maybe we'd like to create an index based on a series of volumes and numbers. Right now we're going to catalog that whole thing as number 1. Finally, we get down to the actual document, and here I've taken the metadata off the web page I was viewing it. I've added the title, I've added the 4 creators. You can have multiple values for any metadata element just by hitting enter. The description I copied from the abstract. I've also put in the publisher, the date, and I put in the date issued. I've also put a URL in for DC source for where the paper came from originally. Now, HTML documents can have metadata in them. So one of the things is if I view the HTML code or page source, I can see if there's any cataloging that travels with this file that I might use. And yes, there is. In fact, what I see that's be useful to me is the keywords. So they have assigned keywords. I'm not using Library of Congress, obviously, but I'm going to copy those. So I'm going to copy and paste them into the cataloging record for this. So you notice I've got any number of subjects and keywords that I can use. I've also copied what they had in DC description, which is sort of like an abstract, and pasted that in DC description. Now I'm cataloging paper 2, and again I opened it for viewing and closed paper 1. One thing to always remember: before you can build a collection, close any open files. Now I'm finishing up number 1 by cataloging paper 3. Moving on to number 2 issue, you notice I'm going to add folder level metadata of number 2 to the DC relation is part of. And now we catalog paper 4 in number 2. Here I decide to do one from the next issue, number 3, and so I've added folder level metadata to number 3. Again, the idea here is maybe later on I want to have an index called series, where everything is organized by volume number and issue number, because I have multiple volumes of this particular publication. Okay, last one, I catalog paper 7 by viewing it in the web browser, and then when I'm done, closing all tabs of the web browser to make sure none of my documents are open when I build the collection. Well, before I build, maybe I want to speed things up by getting rid of useless indexes. For example, there is a search of file name index. This should always be removed. It's useless. And in fact, a title index should be removed. If you have a full text search engine, is the title search function really all that useful? No. Now that I'm finished with the Design tab, it's on to Create, where I click Build Collection and watch it build. Log is created here. I can view of the build in progress. You should examine this for any errors. And then when it's finished, I click Preview to take a look at my collection. And there it is. The collection has the parts, titles. Oh, I thought I removed file names. That shouldn't be there. It should have the titles index, the full text search engines there. A lot of this other stuff is automatically generated by Greenstone, and it can all be changed. We'll do a complete makeover of all of these things in upcoming weeks. When you're working on a collection, you want to test it out. So the first thing we're going to test out here is the search engine. So I'm going to do a search for library, and we see there's 7 documents returned. So it shows you the display. This is the default display of title and file name, not particularly useful. The icon here on the left is the Greenstone converted icon. So any document gets converted if it's in a format such as PDF, Word, RTF, things like that. They'll be a converted one. HTML files do not have to be converted because the conversion really converts them to HTML anyway, so it leaves them alone. So this is to the HTML document level. So if we click on that, it will view the document. The document here is also known as the document text level, which can be modified in many ways. It will turn out to be very useful later. There is a headers attached and some buttons attached to every document. Now we may decide that these are not necessary and we'd like to get rid of them. Now, if we click the back button to go back, or click your banner to return to the home page of the collection, we can now click on the title index to see what that looks like. We see here the title index, and we notice there's 3 columns. This is in fact an HTML table. There's the document icon on the far left. What's here in the middle? There's a stray image. So the middle column is where images or a source file icon, like a PDF one we saw last week, or a Word icon or something like that would go. And then the third column is the title and file name. Now we can modify this format. So here is our to-do list of tasks that we want to do. First task, and you'll want to do this for your assignment, is to get rid of the useless indexes. So off to the Design tab, Browsing Classifiers, and we see the EX source, where the file name is held. So that's the variable containing the file name. We're going to remove that index. Now that we remove the file name index, let's add a useful index, such as authors. So we select the index type we want. In this case, it's AZ compact list from the pull down. We click Add Classifier, and then we assign what metadata element is going to be the source of data for that index. In this case, the authors are held in DC Creator, so we're going to put that in. Now, the index name, by default, is based on the metadata name, but having the word creator may be somewhat confusing to users. So the button name down here at the bottom allows us to assign our own menu label. We're going to use the word author or authors. Next, let's add a useful subject index. So what we're going to do is select, again, the type of index, AZ compact list from the pull down, click Add Classifier, and the metadata we want, we can select from the pull down to be DC subject and keywords. And at the button name, let's put a menu label of subjects or subject. When you create and build and preview this, you'll see you now have two indexes, an author one, in which each author is an index entry. This little bookshelf icon indicates index entries. Now, an author may have one or multiple publications, so all the articles authored by David Allen would be under here. The same way subjects. We see there's a bookshelf icon indicating an index entry or node under Action Research, and any journal articles on Action Research would be collated together under there. If you click on the bookshelf icon, you see all the related, and in our case we only got one document per person, so it's not quite realistic. We see under Francis Wood there's the one. So you notice the format is the same as we had for the other ones. The icon that click takes you to the document level, and we get the title and the file name. So we probably want to change the format of these indexes. So here's our to-do list. Now, keeping a list of things to do is a really good idea because, one, it lets you know what you should be working on. You can break it into chunks, and also lets you know when things are done so you can take a break and have a reward. The Format tab is where you create the code that says what the web pages should look like. So if we go up to Format and Format Features, we can see there's all the various parts of our system. So the document heading is in here along with the document buttons. So we can select something like document heading, and we see the code is down in the HTML format string. We can change that or delete it. So we've clicked on the HTML format string and deleted the code. So now there is no document heading. The same is done for the document buttons. We select document buttons in the format features. We go down the HTML format string, click here, and we remove, delete the existing text. There it is, all done. It's a good idea when you make a change to format to preview it to see what it's going to look like. Now, you don't have to rebuild your collection for format changes. Those are only in the web browser. They're not like creating new index entries. So we see previous we had the buttons and header, and now we've removed them. They're gone. So it's a little cleaner looking. The other useful thing about having a list is if you have a task on it, such as make a web banner, you may realize, ooh, I don't know how to do that. So you'd have to research how to make a web banner and practice a bit before you can complete that task. Fortunately for you, if you don't know how to use Photoshop, I've added some information on how to make a web banner using PowerPoint to the Dropbox on the website. Once you've created your banner, you have to add it. This can be done easily by going to Format General, and then clicking on Browse for the About page. Now, I've got some ones I've included in the Dropbox with the Files folders. So I've got a bunch of banners. So I'm going to select the Info R one and take a look. So here are the 3 banners that are included in the Dropbox that you can use for this task. First one I tried was the Info R one. This is actually from the real website, not much of a banner. So then I scoured the internet looking for other ones. This one here, not bad. I kind of like that one. And I've got this other one here with the shiny happy people in it. So I tried them all. I think I settled on number 2. Now once you select a banner, what happens to it? It's automatically copied. No matter where that banner was, it's copied into your collections folder, into an images directory, right? So you can put any images in there. Once they're in there, you can refer to them. So you can copy any kind of files into this folder. Other images that you want to put on your home page, which goes here, or MP3 files, or CSS files, or anything, JavaScript. You can all put anything in this web directory called images for your collection. This collection is week 2. Now what I've done here is decided to make a better collection description. So I've added some HTML code, blah, blah, blah. You notice I've got an image source. I'm referring to the info.r image that got copied over to the images folder. I'm using a variable to refer to that location. Because where Greenstone is installed varies across systems, I have to use a variable. So httpc images with the 2 underscores, and a slash, and the file name was called info.rjpg. So I put that in here, and that image is going to show up on my home page. And I've added a bunch of other information and a hyperlink and blah, blah, blah. So now I've got a bit more of a formatted home page that can describe what this collection is. And if I preview my home page, I see there's my new custom banner, and I've got information on the collection, and I should add who the users are for this. Now, for your assignment, this is what you want to do as well. You need a custom banner, and you need a little bit of information on the home page. Okay, that was all fairly straightforward. Now, the next part is more difficult. We're actually going to get into code. We have to code things, instructions for a web page of how indexes are going to appear. So we have to modify these 4 areas, I would think. First index we're going to modify is a title one, which is a simple index type of list. We click on Format, Format Features, and then select CL1 List. From the drop-down, we get to see the code that says how it should look under the HTML format string. You'll notice the code consists of HTML, which is really using a table. You can't see the table tags, they're not in here, of any number of columns. You can create a table. Default here is 3 columns, and any number of rows depending on how many records. You also notice besides the HTML, there is Greenstone variables. For example, what is the icon? The icon variable, bracket icon bracket, is this little Greenstone icon that links to the document. The bracket link is the hyperlink part. That's what makes it go to the document. We have in the second line there ex source link, thumbnail icon, or source icon. You notice the macro command or. This means if there's a thumbnail icon, display that first. What's a thumbnail icon? See the contents image? That's a thumbnail for a larger image. Or if there's not that, then use ex source icon. What's a source icon? If there is a PDF or Word or RTF file, that Word icon or PDF icon would be displayed here. The ex source link and ex/source link would hyperlink those icons to the original document. So if you click on the PDF icon, it goes to the PDF file. We saw this last week. So that's in the second column. The third column uses again an OR. Why? Because it doesn't know whether there's something in DC title or maybe in EX title. EX title is extracted titles. So Greenstone, when files are imported, tries to automatically extract metadata. If no titles exist, after the comma here, it says to do untitled. So the OR basically says a hierarchy of things to do. If there's a DC title, display it first. If not, try look for EXP title, then EX title, and if none of these are true, use untitled. Now the final line uses an if. What's the if? The if allows you to test something out. So what's in the brackets next is the test expression. So it says ex source. What's ex source? A file name. So if there's a file name, what do we do? After the first comma comes what to do if this is true. So if there's a file name, do a carriage return, make it italic, display the file name, and the italic, blah, blah, blah. So if there's a file name, display it. Okay, where are file names? File names only exist in records. So this only is going to happen if there is a record here. So for example, here's the title, that's a record. So we're going to display underneath, in italics, the file name. So what the ORs and the IFs allow you to do is have conditional formatting code. Display this format if something is true. Now there's also a false option. It's not being used here. For example, the if one that says if there's a file name and this is true, do this. So there's only one comma. We could add a second comma after this to say what to do if something is false. If you've ever used Excel and written macros, the if one is very commonly used the same way. You use if to test something and you have a true outcome and a false outcome. So now we modify the format code for our title index. If it's in gray, you can't modify it until you click Add Format. Once we click Add Format, we can change this code. Now first, let's solve that stray image problem by removing line 2. Line 2 is for column 2. Remove that and go back and preview your title's index, and you'll see that it's gone. It's a good idea to make a change and observe the result of the change immediately. So if this is not correct down here, you know what the problem is. Now our next thing is to modify the third column. We can shorten this OR statement. We don't need as much there. We don't need the entitled. The main thing we want to do here is use a series of ifs to display the metadata for those records that have it. Now our problem is in the titles. Every title is going to be shown, but we only cataloged 5 of the 9 records. So we don't want these labels of author and subject showing up for records that don't have DC creator or DC subject. So we're going to use the if. So if something exists, if there is an author value in DC creator, what comes after the comma is true. So we'll display a carriage return, put in author, and then display the author. If there's no author, we didn't catalog it, what happens? Nothing, because we don't have the second comma, so we have nothing for the false option. So when we preview, what do we see? So in the titles index, we see there's now only 2 columns. The greenstone icon, when clicked, leads to the document. And for this first record, we see there are authors and subjects, so those are all displayed. Record number 2, note that there is no author or subject. We didn't catalog it, so it only gets the title displayed. Record 3 and 4 are the same here. Now the last record gets to. And you notice, though, there's only one author displayed and one subject. Didn't we enter multiple values? Yes, we did. But the default is only to display the first value. Now we can change that. We'll do that in upcoming weeks, but it's okay for now. Okay, let's fix up the search results. Search is basically the same as a list index type. It's a simple A to Z list, except they're not in A to Z order, they're in relevance order. So we're going to copy the code. We know it works, right? We got works for the index 1. I'm going to copy that code, and I'm going to go off to, by choosing the search from the pull down for feature, and we have the code here in the format string. It's grayed out, so I'm going to have to click Add Format, and I'm going to replace that existing code with my working code from the title index. There's another good reason for breaking things down into chunks or tasks. I worked on the title index, I got it working, I know it works, so I can take something I know works and reuse it here into the search one. And once you make a change, take a look at the result of that change. So previewing it now to see what happened with that. I see actually I'm quite happy with the results. My index looks like it should. I've done a search for the word library. You notice here is, as I said, they were ranked by relevance. How do I know that? Well, those scores aren't shown by default, but later on we'll do that. It's okay for now. Almost done. But here's the sticky part. Authors and subjects are different index types than simple list index, which lists everything. So authors and subjects are a more complex relationship. Title index is really a one-to-one. There's a title, matches a record. Well, an author index is really a one-to-many. An author can write one or many articles. An article can be authored by one or many authors. Same thing with subjects. So they're a bit more complicated to write code for. So click Format, Format Features, select from the Choose Feature pull down, CL2. This is the AZ compact list for authors. And we see the format code here in the HTML format string, and it's grayed out, so we're going to click Add Format so we can change it. The main thing we're going to change is the second column here, and we're going to use an if. So we're going to use the if ex source. So if there's a file name, what do? After the comma is true. So if it's true there's a file name, we're displaying the record. We'll put a carriage return, display the author label, display the value of the author, display a subject layer, and then display the subject, and then a carriage return, and then display the abstract stored in DC description. So this is only going to happen for the actual records. Now you notice we didn't change the first line. Why? Because the first line does double duty. Complex indexes that collate records together, AZ compact lists for authors and subjects, have two parts. The first part is the index entry, which we saw with the bookshelf icon. So the bookshelf icon is displayed by the icon code, bracket, icon, bracket. And the links code beside it link that bookshelf to all the associated records. So all the journal articles authored by one person would be that. Now when you click on the bookshelf icon, you go to the record index level that lists all the associated records. At this point, the icon variable now holds the greenstone converted icon, and the link command goes to that document when that icon is clicked. So they use the same thing as used for the two different levels. The second part of the column is also that. So we have to have the text of the index entry or node. So this author was Francis Wood. That is held in EX title or DC title for the index nodes. But when you get down to the actual records of that index node, that's the document title. So that's why we didn't mess with those first two parts. The third part here is where we want to display additional metadata. And what we're using here is the if to say, if there's a file name. File names are only associated with records. So this metadata stuff will only be displayed for records and not, we don't want it up here at the index node entry. That would make a big mess. So if we take a preview, we see the top level of both of those index. Here's the author index with all the names being index entry. You notice we put them in last name, first name order so they're collated correctly. We did this when we were cataloging them. And the second one is the subject ones. Now this is not the best subject I've ever seen. It's rather flat. You notice all the information ones? That could be done a lot better. Again, they didn't seem to use Library of Congress. So when you drill down from, you click on an index entry, let's say Ian Owens in the author one, we see all the records that he's authored. Now, in this case, he's only got one, but there could be any number of records under his name. Because this is the record level, you see our if statement kicks in and the author and subject is displayed here. We haven't changed the format of the subject one yet to match this, but it's pretty well the same thing. You may have noted those index entries or nodes do not display the number of records they contain. That would be very useful for the user. For example, if you knew that Mr. Allen had authored 50 articles, you'd assume he's an authority. That information is here. It's contained in a variable called num_leaf_docs. So we could display that. In fact, we actually should. So what we're going to do is go back to format features, the CL2, and we're going to modify the last line. That's what we have so far is if a file name exists, if ex source, which means we're at the record level, display the metadata attached to that record. That is the true part that comes after the first comma. So what we're going to add is a second comma, which is the false option. So if there is no file name, this expression is false. Then where are we? We must be at the index entry or node level. So let's display in brackets the value, which means the number of records that index entry or node contains. Okay, let's do that and preview it. So when we preview it, what do we have? We now are displaying in brackets the value of num_leaf_docs for each index entry or node. Now, we only have one article for each person. This is highly unusual in academics. So normally what you'd see here is numbers, 4, 5, whatever. So, but it's working. Now that we have working code for the AZ compact list index type for authors, the same code would work for subjects. So if we do format features, choose CL3, and it's grayed out, so we click Add Format so we can change the code. So what I've done is copied the existing code for the author's index from the HTML format string and then pasted it in to replace the HTML format code for the subject index. So when you make a change to the format, preview it immediately to see whether it worked. You don't want to make 4 or 5 changes and then preview, because if it doesn't work, which one of your changes caused that? You don't know. So one change, do a test. It's like trial and error. Now this index here, the subject one, is quite bad actually. It's very flat. You know, it's information, information, information. A better choice than the AZ compact list would have been the hierarchical index type, which would create something like information with all these subcategories underneath it. We'll do that in upcoming weeks. But we can see our format code works. So you're pretty well done. If you've completed this task, you'll have enough information and hopefully understanding to go with it, how to do the assignment. The last part is when you go to do your assignment, you want to get it to me so I can take a look. You want to export out a read-only version. Let's see how we can do that. So select File and choose Write CD DVD Image. So I know this is yours. You probably want to use your name at the top. It only takes 8 characters, I think, so I'm using G. Knickers here. Make sure you tick this one so it doesn't install any files. That annoys me tremendously. You don't want to do that. And I've selected, notice I have a lot of collections, so I've selected the one I'm working on. This one is called Week 2, so I put a check mark in that. Then all you have to do is click Write CD DVD Image, and away you go. Now when it's done, it's going to create a folder called Exported underscore and the name of the collection you added. I use G. Knickers, so it's going to export G. Knickers, and it's where is it? It's in your Greenstone folder in the temp directory. So if I browse down here, I'm going to go to my Greenstone folder. There it is. I'm going to now in the see all the Greenstone stuff. At the bottom is one called temp. Inside that, you notice I've got a couple exported. The exported G. Knickers is the one I want. If I take a look inside, I see a number of files. One of the files is called server.exe. This is the one I'm going to click to run a view-only version of your collection. You can pre-test this out by running it yourself, but only on Windows. So when I double-click server.exe, it pops out the little web server. It says enter library. I click on that, and it shows me the collections in the library. Right now there's only one, mine. So it gives me an icon. I click on that, and I see my collection. I can test out everything. I can do searches. I can see all the indexes, browse the articles, do everything as if it was exactly a real web one. So this allows me to take a look at your stuff. Now, this folder can be sent anywhere. You can pop it in a USB. You can burn it to a CD-ROM. If you had to, you could zip up, archive the folder, and email it to someone. What I want you to do, I don't want you to submit this one. This was your task, week task, but this should show you enough to create your HTML one. So you're going to take your 5 HTML files, create a collection. Then when you're finished and it's happy you're with it, you can then export that out to a folder and then place that folder in the LIS 9720 Dropbox. If you didn't install the Dropbox software, you have a more difficult task. You must zip up your folder and upload it to the SharePoint website or to the Dropbox interface. I'll send an email explaining those options. Those are much slower. So I suggest, if you want it easy, install the Dropbox software. Okay, best of luck. I'm going to send the email around that shows on how to do all this stuff.